Hey folks, before you settle in, crack the window just a hair. Trust me, tonight's tale is ripe. Dim the lamp, ease back into your pillow, and picture a moon suspended over a stone fortress. You can almost taste the chill in the air, the moss on the walls, the faint reek wafting up from somewhere you'd rather not visit. Welcome to the backdoor economy of medieval sanitation, where the only promotion was deeper into the darkness. You're about to walk the night shift with the Gong farmer, the poor soul who cleaned every privy, pit, and garderobe chute between the buttery and the battlements. Forget gleaming armor and chivalric romance. This story is told from the bottom of the barrel, beneath the straw, halfway to the cesspit that nobody wants to remember, yet everybody needs. And you, dear listener, are about to step into his shoes. Soft leather? Not a chance. Burlap? Maybe. Already damp around the ankles. Speaking of pay, let's talk numbers. A gong farmer might earn 4, maybe 5 pence a night, about the price of a decent loaf and a watered ale. Good money, some say, but hazard wages come with hazard breath. You spend half your coin on herbs just so your own family can stand within breathing distance. And tools, replacement rakes, gloves if you're lucky, waxed canvas to tie around your calves, are your responsibility. The steward's words, not yours. The lantern sputters. The flame fights for air, choking on methane sweet enough to kill if it builds too thick. That's lesson 1 you wish someone had whispered sooner. Never let the gases collect. More than one gong farmer has fainted, slipped, and drowned in what he was paid to remove. A grisly occupational obituary. Found face down in the pit, suffocated by his own employment. Your solution? Keep the hatch cracked, let cold night drafts swirl, and whistle so the guards above know you're conscious. If the whistling stops, they'll wait a polite minute. Nobody rushes to rescue a gong farmer. Then lower a rope, hold their noses, and drag you out like a fish slimed with nightmares. Tonight's load is heavier than usual. There was a feast, St. Crispin's Day, lots of beer. The waste slurry foams at the edges where yeast still ferments like a second, fouler brew. You rake in circles, driving the mixture toward the runoff sluice. Each push sets ripples dancing with half-digested barley. You wonder which lord's jest landed that chicken bone here, still sharp, dagger-like. If you stepped on it barefoot, you'd get more than splinters, a septic wound, and a priest's last rites. Boots? Too expensive. You wrap rags around your feet and pray the rats fear you. Ah yes, the rats. Not timid, not gray, but castle-bred monsters fat on kitchen scraps and, well, everything else. They watch from ledges, eyes like embers, whiskers twitching in judgment. SWAT 1 and its siblings swarm, outraged over lost inheritance. You've grown philosophical about them. They're co-workers of a sort, unpaid interns who recycle what you cannot. Some nights you're grateful. Other nights you find a rat half-eaten by a bigger rat, and you remember exactly how low you stand in the feudal pecking order. Halfway through, you pause to stretch. Above, a distant lute strums. A minstrel finishing a bawdy ballad for courtiers too drunk to taste the future hangover. They don't know you exist, except as a rumor in the servants' gossip. The night phantom who drags misery out the back door. Once a page boy dared a friend to spy on you through a floor crack. The boy vomited so violently he had to drink mint tea for a week. You felt a flicker of pride. Who else wields such invisible power? You can empty a stomach from 20 feet with nothing but your presence. Yet pride fades when the blisters split. The rake's handle is worn to a polish by years of desperate fingers, and it grates the same place on your palm until flesh peels. You've learned to wrap linen strips, but linen soaks filth, and within minutes you're gripping a sodden lash of disease. You rotate hands, cursing softly. The echo makes it sound like the pit itself is complaining. Let's pause on disease, because every breath here gambles with plague. Not the bubonic headline grabber, although fleas thrive in warm corners, but humbler horrors: dysentery, typhoid, roundworm. You know the symptoms the way scribes know Latin declensions. Cramps? Drink boiled nettle water and hope. Fever? Pray the castle leech owns clean blades. Your immune system is a battered shield, but one slip and you'll join the anonymous dead buried beyond the walls, wrapped in the same sacks used for kitchen refuse. The chaplain will mumble a 3-minute prayer, long enough to exhale without smelling your final bouquet. Back to work. Bucket after bucket, you haul up by rope to the courtyard midden, a fenced pit outside the curtain wall. At dawn, farmers from nearby fields will shovel the night's harvest into carts, mix it with straw, and spread it as fertilizer over barley rows. Night soil, they call it. You try not to picture nobleman's waste steaming into peasant's bread. Circle of life? More like a wheel stuck in muck, spinning but going nowhere. Toward the pit's far end lies a chute, its stone mouth chipped, slick, and rumored haunted. Servants say you can hear moans when the wind runs through. Those aren't spirits. That's the wind itself lamenting the indignity of carrying such fumes. But you're pragmatic. A haunted chute that swallows waste is better than a pristine corridor that sends it back. Superstition yields to practicality when your livelihood depends on gravity. Hours creep. Your shoulders burn, thighs tremble. The stain on your tunic has gone from dark brown to something greenish, alive perhaps. You'll soak it in lye tomorrow, but the color never fully leaves, and neither does the smell. Merchants yank their stalls away when you pass. Innkeepers pretend their tables are full, even when chairs sit empty. You can buy ale only at the back door, coins wiped clean twice before touching palms. You'd be lonely if you had time, but exhaustion spares you sentiment. Sleep, work, rinse, figuratively, water is scarce, and repeat. The castle cook lets you bunk near the ovens where heat kills some odor. She's kind, but even she insists you stay on the far side, using last year's cabbage sacks as bedding. You've slept worse. Once in winter, locked out by accident, you bedded in hay beside the piggery. Pigs didn't mind. They grunt in recognition when they smell you now, a fraternity of filth. Your mind drifts. You imagine a life beyond the cesspit. A traveling tinker, maybe, mending pots under open skies unmarred by ammonia. But tinkers need skills, tools, a horse. You own a rake, a bucket, and a smell that walks ahead of you like a herald of doom. Not the best resume. So you focus on tonight's silver lining. A tiny breeze slips through a crack in the wall, carrying pine smoke from the guard tower brazier. For one blessed heartbeat, the pit smells like forest. You close your eyes, pretending cool needles cushion your feet instead of sludge. The illusion shatters when a drip lands on your head. Don't look up. Trust me. Finally, the surface beings stir. A cockerel crows in the distant bailey, hoarse as if offended by the reek wafting from your hatch. Dawn's blue hint spills down the stairs, and with it comes duty's end. You scrape the last film from the stones, sprinkle ash to neutralize gases, and seal the hatch. The latch clicks like a coffin lid, except this corpse wakes every night. You shuffle to the courtyard. Breath puffs in pale clouds. The cold air knifes through your damp clothes, but it's a welcome blade, cleansing, clarifying. A sentry wrinkles his nose, steps aside. You're invisible until you're unbearable. In the stable trough, you splash water on your face. Steam rises as filth meets frost. The stable boy gawks, then offers a rag. Small mercies happen in strange places. Payment awaits at the steward's office. He counts coins twice, slides them across the table with fingertips poised as if money itself stinks. You mumble thanks. He records your name in the ledger's margins, illegibly on purpose, so if disease spreads, they can pretend you never existed. Liability Management, Medieval Edition. Coins tucked, you head to the kitchens. Porridge ladled out, thick as plaster. You eat alone near the doorway because nobody else wants to season their perfume. Outside, carts rumble in for loading night soil. You watch farmers shovel, chatting casually, praising the richness. They call you sir in jest, ask if tonight's yield is particularly potent. You grin, mouth too tired for retorts, then shuffle to the bakehouse loft to sleep. Straw mattress, low ceiling, warmth of ovens below. The cook nods, pinches her nose, but leaves a crust of bread as peace offering. As you drift into sodden dreams, you realize something odd. The castle can't function without you. Knights may swing swords, clerks may tally rents, but without your nightly pilgrimage, privies back up. Nobility panics. Disease riots through the halls. Yet you remain unpaid for sickness, unpraised in chronicles, unseen in tapestries. History records kings, it edits out the rake. But tonight, between dusk's first chill and dawn's last ember, you held the keys to a kingdom of refuse. Disgusting, yes, but oddly powerful. Power scented like rotting onions, but power nonetheless. Tomorrow night you'll descend again, lantern in hand, rats in attendance. The cycle will grind, and you will grind with it. The unseen gear that keeps courtly life turning without a squeak. Well, aside from your own. All right, slide the shutter closed, hush the hallway, and let the castle drift back to sleep while we pick up exactly where the last shovelful left off. Sunrise was just a rumor when you curled on the bakehouse loft, but the ovens have cooled, the crust of bread is gone, and the ache in your shoulders taps you awake before the first bell rings for prime. You blink in warm darkness, tasting vinegar and ash on the back of your throat, and realize the day shift of servants is already clattering below. They shuffle trenchers, argue about who watered the beer, gossip about which lady fainted during matins. Not one of them guesses you're perched overhead like a soot-stained gargoyle, ears tuned for any hint that last night's work has resurfaced. No disaster. Good. That means your siphon channels held, your ash scatter neutralized the worst fumes, and the cesspit's surface tension hasn't rebelled. You might permit yourself a moment of professional pride, if anybody in this fortress knew enough to applaud. Instead, you yank on stiff hose, rewrap those ragged feet, and limp down the ladder toward the courtyard. A sliver of pale sky greets you, clean as parchment, and for a heartbeat you almost believe today could smell better than yesterday. Almost. Because Today is Inspection Day. Once a fortnight, the Lord's Chamberlain, who's never sharpened a rake, let alone smelled one, insists on touring the sanitary infrastructure. He calls it taking the airs. You call it the moment someone in silk discovers new synonyms for vomit. His objective isn't hygiene, it's coins. The castle rents out surplus manure to tanners and saltpeter men in the nearby town. So the Chamberlain needs proof the supply line is, shall we say, vigorous. To him, you're not flesh and bone. You're a walking ledger entry. Output per night, tonnage per cart, copper per load. When you arrive at the midden, he's already there, pinching a pomander of cloves beneath his nose. Behind him stand two town officials in velvet caps, envoys from the guild of gong collectors beyond the walls. They eye you like a rival innkeeper who watered the ale twice. You know them by reputation. They clear the municipal cesspits, charge by the barrel, and would love to annex the castle contract. Competition, medieval style, is rarely settled with bids, more often with bribes, sabotage, or the occasional shove off a ladder at midnight. You salute with your rake, splattering a tasteful fleck of brown onto the nearest velvet shoe. Pure accident, of course. The Chamberlain clicks his tongue. Mind the spatter, man. Mind the spatter. You bite back a laugh. If spatter worried him, he'd hold inspection from a trebuchet. Still, orders are orders. You demonstrate last night's yield, tidy cones of crumbly waste mixed with wood ash stacked like grotesque loaves ready for market. The tanners nod. Texture looks perfect for curing hides. The saltpeter men prod a pile with brass rods, hoping for the white crystals that feed gunpowder. One wrinkles his brow in disappointment. Needs another week's rot, he mutters, as if you can command decomposition like a choir. Paperwork is signed, purses exchanged. None of those coins will trickle into your palm, but you keep smiling, because the Chamberlain does notice cheerful obedience. And cheerful obedience means fewer fines when you accidentally break a bucket or use too much vinegar rations. That's the closest thing to leverage a gong farmer gets. By tierce bell, the officials are gone, and you're alone with the midden again, just long enough to spot the first crisis of the day. Steam. Not mist from dawn, but the thick sulphurous bloom of gas escaping through a hairline crack in the inner pit wall. You crouch, listen. There it is, a faint gurgle, like some demon chewing soup. If the crack widens, liquefied joy will seep into the charcoal store next door. One stray spark, and the castle's sanitary problem becomes a flaming sanitary problem. Flaming excrement, if you haven't witnessed it, is memorable. It sticks, it smokes, it sings. You'd rather the Lord never learn that lesson. So you sprint, not easy in sackcloth shoes, to the mason's yard. The chief mason, big as a beer barrel and twice as sour, owes you a favor. Last winter you fished his lost wedding ring out of the pit before his wife noticed. You remind him gently, and within an hour you're back at the crack, mortar at the ready. He plugs the seam while you hold boards to shield him from splashes. When it's sealed, he claps your shoulder, carefully, and whispers, "Come by tonight, I've a jug of cider tucked behind the kiln." The rarest commodity in a gong farmer's world isn't pay, it's friendship that survives the smell. Afternoon drags like a rusted chain. Inspections finished, you tackle daylight chores, scouring the wooden close stools used by lords too dainty for cold stone chutes, boiling linen rags in lye so chambermaids have clean wipes, sprinkling lime powder down the external garderobes perched over the moat to deter insects. Lime stings lungs, but it keeps black flies from turning privy seats into carnage. You breathe shallow, eyes watering, and remember an old Gong farmer's proverb: "If it doesn't hurt the nose, it won't kill the worms." Charming occupational wisdom. While you work, gossip flutters around you. A noble guest arrived last night, some minor countess with delicate nerves and an entourage that travels with rosewater jars. The castle's best chamber has been perfumed, tapestried, scrubbed until the flagstones squeal. One problem, its garderobe hasn't been emptied in a month because the chute bends awkwardly over an outer buttress. No rope pulley fits, no bucket tilts right. Servants are terrified they'll drop valuables into oblivion. The steward finds you after vespers. His tone suggests he's granting you a privilege rather than another perilous chore. You nod because refusal isn't language anyone here understands. Dusk again. You could measure your life in torches lit. Tonight you carry 2, plus a coil of rope and a leather harness borrowed from the stable. The awkward chute is 40 feet up the curtain wall, accessible only via the battlements, then down a narrow ledge slick with moss. Castle cats wander there to hunt birds. You wonder whether any have ever slipped and become part of your nightly collections. Up top, wind claws at your cloak. Below, the courtyard lanterns bob like fireflies. Above, the moon wears a halo, always a sign of coming rain. Perfect. You tie the rope to a merlin, loop the harness, and edge onto the ledge. Each step smears slime underfoot. The chute's mouth yawns, carved stone, ornate once, now crusted. You wedge the torch into an iron bracket, lean close, and gag despite years of practice. This chute has been neglected so long, the contents have congealed into layers. Brown, black, then white saltpeter frosting. It's archaeological. You chip at it with a chisel, packing chunks into a canvas bag. They hit with a wet thud and a belch of fetid air that sends castle pigeons scattering. Somewhere inside, a brooch glitters, probably the countess's. Retrieve it, scrub it, hand it to the steward, and maybe, just maybe, someone will staple a single extra penny to your wage. Hard to tell whether the stench or the hope keeps you going. Half an hour later, bag full, knees trembling, you haul yourself back onto the parapet. Wind has shifted, rain's coming faster than the halo promised, sweeping across the valley like an angry laundress. First drops strike the bag. You know what that means: liquefaction. The crust you scraped will begin to re-soften, and you are presently wearing a harness filled with potential sludge. Hustle. You half walk, half slide to the stair, praying the tie knots hold. You're 3 steps from the bottom when you hear it. Crack, splorch, splash. The bag seam bursts. A cascade of medieval lasagna sluices down the steps, over your boots, into the passage. You jump aside too late. Ankles disappear, then shins. The flood finds its own path, straight beneath the door of the weapons storeroom. Pike shafts absorb everything like wicks. Tomorrow, soldiers will oil blades that stink like cess water and curse whatever demon haunted the night. You whisper an apology to ghosts of hygienic dignity and trudge to fetch sawdust. Cleanup lasts until the compline bell, which means no nap before your regular shift. You're running on pure spite now, but spite can fuel miracles. You swap sodden clothes for your least filthy spare set, still stiff with residue, and head to the main pit. Lantern, rake, bucket, the unholy trinity. The rats greet you like old friends, sniffing new aromas on your cuffs. One bold brute, half tail missing, scar across its muzzle, follows you so closely you consider drafting it as an apprentice. Pity rats don't grip rakes. Tonight's glide down the spiral feels steeper. Every muscle pleads mutiny. You counter with the math of survival. One more night's wage equals bread, vinegar, maybe soap, and certainly cider from the mason. Debt doesn't pause because you're tired. Family, if you have any left, can't eat excuses. Work. You prod the surface crust. Ah, physics. Over the day, gases have ballooned under the scum. A wrong poke could bubble upward in a noxious burp strong enough to douse the lantern. You pierce gently, release pockets one by one, like lancing boils. Each hiss reminds you why torches are banned in the pit. A single spark among methane, castle goes boom. Lord blames peasant sorcery. Everybody loses, except rival barons who wanted this fortress weakened. History books skip those parts. You live them nightly. As midnight settles, you slip into the rhythm. Scrape, scoop, haul, hum a nonsense tune because silence lets thoughts creep too close. Hours pass. You discover a pewter plate etched with falcons, stolen from last month's hunt feast. A child's rag doll soaked beyond recognition. And, disturbingly, the paw of a marten trap still snapped shut. Whatever animal met that fate is long dissolved, leaving only iron jaws as accusation. You set it aside for the blacksmith. He recycles steel bits, pays you in nails for boot repairs. Barter thrives where coin is scarce. Somewhere above, the Countess sighs in her sleep, blissfully ignorant that her recovered brooch now waits in a basin of lye, and that her misplaced dinner has begun the long journey toward local barley fields. Nobility dreams of court intrigue. You dream of clean water and a world where toilets empty themselves. Nearly done. Final bucket sloshes up the rope line. You dust the pit with wood ash, your signature finish, and clamber topside. The courtyard is glassy with rain. Clouds break just enough for moonlight to silver every puddle, turning the mud into a mirror. You see your reflection. Hollow eyes, hair plastered, skin tinted by lantern soot. You look older than the steward, though he's twice your age. Time bends different for those who live among decomposition. On your way to the bakehouse loft, you detour by the mason's kiln. True to his word, a jug of cider waits. Warmed by the coals, faintly spiced, worth more than a king's banquet to your cracked lips. You drink straight from the neck, let sweetness carve a path through layers of foul flavor. For 5 heartbeats, you're merely human, not function. You hand the jug back empty, murmur thanks to the night sky, and shuffle off before dawn's gossip begins again. As you climb the ladder, you think about the town gong collectors. They'll lobby hard for the contract, citing efficiency, manpower, superior carts. What they don't grasp is this castle's peculiar geography. The awkward chutes, the haunted bends, the rats that know you by scent. Outsiders will underestimate everything the first week, and the second week the moat will foam with uncollected filth, and the Lord will send a panicked messenger begging you to return at double wages. Or so you hope. Hope, vinegar, and spite, the tripod that keeps you upright. Straw mattress greets you. Rain drums the roof. Muscles sigh. As sleep drags you under, you wonder, Could you write a handbook? Secrets of Gong Farming, a treatise on pit, pipe, and privy. No one would buy it, true, but imagine the dedication. To all who toil unseen, so others may dine untroubled. A chronicle carved not in stone, but in survival. The oven's last embers fade. The loft cools. Dawn edges over the battlements with the color of dishwater. You exhale one long breath, equal parts relief and resignation. Another night conquered. Another night waiting tomorrow. All right, drag your sleeve across the drizzle-fogged lattice. Peer through the diamond panes and brace yourself. The castle is waking ugly this evening. Soot-colored clouds squat so low over the turrets they look ready to squeeze out another day's worth of mud. And already the courtyard smells like wet horse and last week's cabbage. None of that matters to you yet. What matters is the metallic clatter echoing up the baker's stair. The sound of a page in panicked boots hunting the one soul foolish enough to answer at this hour. That would be you, naturally, so you swing down the ladder before he can pound the door again and earn you both a tongue-lashing from the cook. He's red-cheeked, clutching a lantern that hiccups with every breath of wind. "Master Wulfric wants you! Urgent!" he blurts, as though urgency isn't the Gong farmer's permanent companion. You start walking before he names the place, because you already know. Only one corner of this fortress ever erupts at twilight, and it's the corner where the cess shoots feed the covert channel under the herb garden. Something clogged, flooded, maybe burst. Otherwise, nobody bothers to sprint uphill for you. The page hands off the lantern and vanishes. You trade clogs for your hobnail boots and snatch the emergency kit. Iron pry bar, rope, wedge, a pouch of blessed marjoram someone swore would tame the stench. It doesn't, but it masks corpse rot well enough. Across the yard you limp, rain peppering your hood, until a line of rush torches shows the path down to the garden wall. There waits Wulfric, captain of garrison, a man carved from oak, currently pinching his nose with a gauntlet, like he'd rather lose the hand than inhale again. "Good. You're quick," he growls. "We've got overflow." You angle the lantern. Mud? No, too black, too viscous. A creeping ribbon of privy liquor snakes between thyme beds, assassinating the basil patch on its way toward the kitchen drains. Somewhere beneath lies a culvert stone that's shifted. You kneel, fingers sinking past knuckle in slurry, find the seam, and feel the throb of water and filth roaring, correct but unseen. Something big blocked the outflow and forced the rest up through the herbist's soft soil. "What jammed it?" you mutter, though the answer bubbles to the surface before words finish. A feathered plume, soggy and bent, drifts by. Then a scrap of crimson wool, gilt thread catching lamplight. You glare at Wulfric. He shrugs with exquisite soldierly innocence. "Falconers lost a hawk hood down the garderobe this noon. Must have been resting on someone's rest when nature called." Brilliant! A wad of leather and embroidery drifted to the grit trap, formed a plug, and here we are watching the garden drown in aristocratic waste. You plant the wedge, coax Wulfric's men to lever the stone. It shifts, belches, and the blockage leaps free in a surge that drenches shins and extinguishes 2 torches. Panic scatters everyone but you. You ride the tide, shoving the fountain back into the channel until flow steadies. 10 minutes later, no witnesses but sopping herbs. You're alone retrieving the hawk hood. The smell says pitch it. The purse strings whisper otherwise. Falconers are rich. A replacement would cost them. You rinse it in rainwater, wring, and stow it. Perhaps a humble tradesman found it on the road tomorrow. Survival is equal parts labor and improvisation. Problem 1 solved. Night barely begun. Back to the midden to grab lime for soil neutralization. Halfway there, a familiar jingle stops you. Saltpeter men returning early. Their cart creaks beneath oaken barrels, 2/3 full from the town pits. They hail you with forced camaraderie. You trade nods, wary. This guild would still rather see you dismissed and your contract folded into theirs. Tonight they offer flattery draped in curiosity. How do you maintain such excellent yield, they ask, gesturing toward the garden robe towers. What ratios of ash to dung produce ideal nitrate blooms? You parry every query with amiable nonsense, moon phases, whispered blessings, and the secret prayer of Saint Fiacre, patron of hemorrhoids, close enough to sanitation. They laugh, half convinced you believe your own babble. You notice they've replaced one barrel's iron bands with fresh pine, too white to be seasoned. Pine swells in damp, may pop inside a week. If that happens while the cart rattles downhill, the resulting spill will coat the high road for furlongs. You say nothing. Sometimes sabotage is self-inflicted. They roll on. You scatter lime over the herb beds, murmuring an apology to the basil roots. By the time the bells toll nuns, your stomach answers louder, no meal since dawn. You slip into the scullery for crusts. A girl you haven't met presses a turnip hand pie into your palm and whispers, "God guard your nose." Sweet mercy. Evening chores layered like sediment. Check the upper ward jakes. Clear the ladies' retiring chamber pots. Fetch fresh straw for the infant prince's cradle. Straw must be impeccably dry. Guess who stores the driest straw in the fortress, above the bakehouse flues? Servants avoid your path, but track your progress by smell. You've grown deaf to the insults, but one word still cuts: unseen. They mean unnoticed, but you hear unvalued. Near curfew, crisis 2. A stable boy bursts into the outer yard, shrieking that the moat glows. By rights, you could ignore him. Moat belongs to the marshal, not sanitation. But curiosity tugs you. Up the guard stair to the parapet, and yes, the boy's right. Greenish flickers dance on the black water. Phosphorescence? No. You sniff the wind. Sour, sharp, familiar. Marsh gas, stirred by pressure from below. You lean over. Squint. A pale film? Soap scum? No one dumps wash water into the moat, unless the laundresses, overwhelmed after last week's bedding change for visiting knights, emptied their vats after dark rather than haul gray water uphill again. Soap tangles with moat algae, algae feasts, gas brews. Now lantern reflections look like witch fire. Pretty, until a guard tosses a torch and turns the whole ditch into a flaming necklace. You trot to the gatehouse, intercept the watch captain before he startles himself. Quiet explanation, quick plan. Add sluice water from the mill stream to dilute gas. Forbid open flame for 2 nights. He scowls. Nobody likes orders from the pit man, but remembers the last blaze that singed his beard and complies. It is a strange power you wield, authority born of catastrophe prevention. Success tastes like stale soap and goes unrecorded. Midnight scrapes its nails against the crenellations. You descend to the pit, lantern swinging. Tonight, the air seems thicker, humidity sealing odors under your hood. Rats scatter before your boots. Halfway down, you freeze. Unfamiliar hiss, then a splash deeper than any bucket drop. Someone else is here. You douse lantern. Let eyes adjust to pitch with slices of moon filtering the shaft grating. There, a silhouette kneels by the far wall, scooping with a tin ladle into a ceramic jug. You can smell the intent. This isn't theft of coins. It's theft of nitrate-rich liquor. Saltpeter men couldn't wait for contracts. They're stealing high-grade liquid direct. Dangerous, illegal, clever. You clear your throat. The figure whirls, slips, half plunges into the mire, but catches the rim. You strike flint, relight wick. Recognizably, Gervais, youngest of the town guild. Terror and shame wrestle on his face. "Cart bans not enough?" you ask, voice flat. He babbles, guild dues rising, town pits low, alchemists demanding more. He swears he meant no sabotage, only a jug or two before anyone noticed. You point to the slick crust edging the wall. Each scoop destabilizes the pit, primes it for cave-in. "Another night and the chapel floor sinks," you snap. Imagine explaining that to God. Punishment options flit through your head. Report him, lose the guild's occasional bribes. Beat him, invite future retaliation. Or recruit him. One extra set of arms on difficult nights, in exchange for tiny allowances of liquor you'd drain anyway. An apprentice you can pay with knowledge and a fraction of nitrate, keeping your enemies closer. You test the thought. Gervais is skinny but wiry, eyes quick. Fear keeps him honest, for now. You offer terms under one condition. He tells his guild the pit guards have doubled. Any theft hereafter will be prosecuted at the gibbet. He agrees too quickly to trust, but you'll bind the deal with task work tonight. He spends till dawn hauling fresh straw and wiping slime from the chapel crypt floor. Rats found a corpse flower there. Priests panicking. If he balks, you expose him. Simple. You throw him a spare rake. Partnership. Forged in filth. Dawn, again. You haven't slept in 30 hours, but chores multiply like lice. Festival week begins tomorrow, Feast of St. Romuald, patron of small children. That means pilgrims. Pilgrims mean overstuffed dormitories and chamber pots filling faster than you can empty them. Steward demands temporary trenches outside the curtain wall so the influx won't swamp interior facilities. He assigns 6 able-bodied laborers to your command, men who up until this moment thought the Gong farmer existed as rumor only. 1 vomits at first whiff, 2 try to quit, 1 faints into the trench he's digging. You bark them back upright, no time for delicate stomachs. By noon, the sky clears enough to bake the muck into a dusty crust that fools the nose until feet break it. You instruct laborers to line trenches with straw, sprinkle with lime, then construct privy screens from old shields and wagon cloth. Privacy by heraldry. They grumble, but coin is coin. While they dig, you draft chalk diagrams on a plank, flow arrows, vent holes, ash dumps. Gervais watches, astonished by the science hidden beneath stink. You lecture. Waste management determines war outcomes, not swords. He starts to believe. Mid-afternoon, messenger from the apothecary. The plague rumor you feared branches into fact. A child delirious, swelling under arms, black blister on thigh. Physicians blame ill airs, demand the pit be sealed. You know seal equals explosion of bacteria elsewhere. Instead, you propose controlled burning of pitch torches at the mouth to vent off vapors, plus increased ash dosing. Apothecary grudgingly accepts if you swear to quarantine linens. You do more. You fetch rosemary, lay bundles in corridors, explain that strong herbs mask odor but also repel fleas. Some nights laugh. Same nights will beg you for advice when fevers strike their squires. You're playing chess while they polish armor. Dusk returns, wearing pilgrims like lice on a goat. They trudge through the gates, clutching tokens and coughing stories from distant shires. Your new trenches groan. Laborers stagger home, clothing ruined. One mutters he'd rather face arrows. Welcome to your world, friend. Night shift, but first you climb outer stairs to the mason's kiln, searching for promised cider. Empty. Mason missing. Kiln cold. Wind carries distant shouting toward the smithy. You hurry. There, the mason penned against an oak post, saltpeter foreman shoving a dagger to his throat. Accusations fly. Barrel band sabotaged. Wagon crashed outside town. Guild blames castlemen. You step between, stench preceding arguments. Foreman recoils. Dagger lowers instinctively. Your leverage isn't steel, it's reputation for surviving anything. You propose truth. Banned wood too fresh, your warning unheeded. But you sweeten with offer. Castle will buy spilled contents at reduced rate if guild keeps peace. Lord needs saltpeter for fireworks on festival eve. Profit salvaged, pride bandaged. Foreman grinds teeth, accepts. Threat lingers in his glare when he learns you found his apprentice trespassing, but you placate. Apprentice punished, now indentured to castle sanitation for season. Guild loses a thief, gains plausible deniability. Mason breathes thanks, thrusts a fresh jug at you. Cider tastes sharper with danger. Rain resumes near midnight. Trenches outside walls turn to tar. You patrol with lantern, ensuring straw holds. Pilgrims shuffle under cloaks. Bless you like some manure-smelling saint as you sprinkle lime near their tents. One little girl offers you a wooden token of St. Romwald, a smiling child etched crude. You tuck it into your rag belt. Protection is where you find it. Back inside, Pitt awaits. You glance at Gervais. He nods, shoulders rake without gagging. Progress. Tonight, a new hazard. Overflow from the scullery sinks mixes with spilled wine from revelers, trickles through cracks into passage above pit, dripping fermented sweetness that lures insects in fury. Clouds of midges cling to ceiling like living soot. You light vinegar-soaked torches, smoke drives them back, and work double speed. Hours blur. Scrape, haul, instruct, curse softly whenever Gervais drops a bucket. He's learning volume mathematics, angle of rake, rhythm of sling. You throw him a compliment, he grins through grime. At final haul, you discover something unexpected in slurry. A silver signet ring bearing the Lord's crest. This isn't trinket lost through clothes. This is political. Whoever dropped it down a privy likely wanted it gone. Perhaps forging absence to fake its theft. Perhaps hiding disgrace. Returning it publicly could trigger accusations. Keeping it invites suspicion if found. Decision weighs heavier than bucket. You tuck ring in leather pouch to ponder. Dawn's rim glows pewter. You and Gervais stash tools, sluice yourselves with rain barrels. He shakes like a whipped dog, but his eyes burn with strange pride. Did more honest work tonight than a week in guild, he says. You laugh. Honesty smells relative down here. He departs. You climb to bakehouse loft. Legs jelly, head whirling with ring dilemmas, plague fears, festival crowds, and the quiet hope that perhaps someday castle folk will see the labyrinth beneath their feet not as punishment but as artery. Without it, everything above dies. You clutch St. Romuald's token, whisper a promise to keep children safe from poisoned air, and let exhaustion pry your eyes shut. Haul yourself upright, rub the grit from your lashes, and taste the morning. Burned barley porridge laced with wood smoke and the sour breath of 500 pilgrims who have already tramped the outer yard into a swamp. No sunrise fanfare, just a bleary trumpet from the watchtower and the collective groan of a fortress that knows it is about to spend 24 straight hours, at least, digesting strangers. If yesterday was rehearsal, today is battle. The feast of St. Romuald is upon us, and every soul within a day's ride wants a blessing, a cheap miracle, and a place to empty last night's ale. First task bleeds straight from your nightmares. The steward sends a groom to rouse you before the crows, waving a parchment like a white flag. Royal courier en route with an honored relic, a splinter of Romuald's cradle, if rumor holds. The chapel must be immaculate, the air sweet, and under absolutely no circumstances can the venerable fragment arrive to the stench of human runoff wafting up from the crypt vents. Translation: cloak the grave fumes fast or lose your post. You grab camphor blocks, dried lavender, and the unlit torches steeped overnight in rosemary vinegar. Down to the crypt you go, boots echoing across cold stone, coin ring still heavy in your pouch. Gervais waits, cheeks smeared with ash to keep off fleas, your advice, holding a slate with last night's measurements. Carbonate levels rising, cloth wraps on the corpses weep black moisture. 2 bodies this month alone from fever rash, not plague yet, but the threshold feels thin as parchment. The plan: smoke the gallery, haul buckets of pit ash to soak up seepage, then seal the offending vents with lime plaster. 3 hours tops if you hustle. The hustle turns to slog the moment Brother Aldwin squeezes down the stair, face gone fish-white. He doesn't see the science, he sees demons in every shimmer of crypt gas. He waves a pewter aspergillum like a mace, dribbling holy water onto your clean ash piles. You let him, water is sterile enough. Then press a vinegar torch into his spare hand and ask him to bless the corners while the saintly smoke rises. Clerical vanity placated, you and Gervais set to work. By the time bells toll prime, the crypt smells less like death and more like overstuffed herb sachets left too close to a hearth, an improvement. Above ground, the pilgrim tide surges. Merchants erect stalls, tin icons, ribbon charms, genuine parchment indulgences, fresh from a scribe who can barely spell salvation. Children chase geese. Someone's goat climbs the well roof and refuses to descend. Your trenches outside the curtain wall groan at capacity. The laborers you drilled yesterday lag already, shoveling lime like gravedigger apprentices. You whistle Gervais over and demonstrate the bucket chain rhythm again. Scoop, toss, sprinkle, repeat. Efficiency is faith now. Just as system finds a pulse, the outer gate erupts with trumpets, the courier. Brilliant blue livery, silver trim, 4 horses lathered from speed. And not only a cradle splinter, the courier also carries dispatches from the capital, sealed with wax identical to the signet ring hidden at your hip. Heart clutches. Coincidence slices thinner than a garrote. You track the procession to the chapel, keeping distance. The courier hands scrolls to Lord Mathern's seneschal, bows, exits. In that instant, you notice the seneschal's own signet, a duplicate of the one in your pouch, gleams intact on his finger. So whose ring tumbled into the pit? There are 3 crests in the household sharing that seal: the Lord, the seneschal, and the Lord's younger brother, Sir Remy, newly returned from border skirmishes. Remy, whose reputation for gambling and midnight trysts competes only with his skill at swordplay. The puzzle sharpens. Mid-morning, crisis. A pilgrim line at the temporary trenches devolves into brawl. Someone cut ahead, someone else spilled honey beer. A skinny lad stumbles, plunges shoulder deep in sludge, and surfaces shrieking that his purse is gone. Accusations fly. The Gong farmer's pits ate my coin. Before fists summon daggers, you step into the ring. You fish an arm into the trench, retrieve the boy's pouch, miraculously near the surface, rinse it in barrel water, return it with a stern note about knots. Peace returns, grubby but intact. Pilgrims eye you now with wary gratitude, half saint, half bogeyman. Barely wipe sweat before the next summons. Kitchen scullions report the refuse chute jammed, backing rotted vegetable mash into pastry prep. You crawl inside the hatch, torch clenched between teeth, reach elbow deep, and find the culprit. A wooden trencher jammed crosswise, letters carved along rim, R entwined with a snake. Sir Remy's personal tablet. The knight apparently tossed it down the chute rather than admit he snapped it in a drunken boast. You pocket the shard, evidence stacking like night soil. Noon sun tries to warm the mud, fails. Steam rises from bodies instead. You eat standing, rye crust dunked in onion broth, while counting full chamber pots lined outside the great hall. Too many for one hauler. You assign Gervais to requisition an empty grain sledge, lash pots 6 aside, fashion a cargo train you can pull to the pit in 2 trips. Steward balks at requisition. You cite the courier's pristine path requirement. Steward folds. Mid-swallow, the plague worry returns, the fevered child. You detour to the infirmary, a drafty loft above the tannery, where Sister Maeve tends 3 patients now, not 1. 2 stable hands display purple buboes at groin and neck. She burns rosemary bundles, but fear ricochets in her eyes. She confesses rats run bold despite traps. Waste pits breed fleas, she implies without accusing. You promise intensified ash cycling, propose strewing pennyroyal and sweet flag reeds around dormitories. She nods, desperation beating skepticism. You give her the last of your lavender stash. On exit, you pass Sir Remy, leaning against a beam, wine goblet at noon, eyes glazed. He salutes with mock grandeur and asks if the saint's cradle keeps babies from shitting themselves. You respond with neutral grunt. His gaze flicks to your belt where the hawk hood sits cleaned and re-oiled. Lost property? He smirks. You counter-smile. Found property. He laughs, stumbles away. He wears no signet ring. Afternoon tasks swarm. The latrine tower roof sprung a leak, dribbling rainwater into the drop shafts. Dilution weakens fermentation heat. You climb, patch tiles with tar cloth. Next, a noblewoman demands perfumed rushes changed in her solar. You deliver bundles laced with mint. Silently note her chamber pot's contents too watery. Dysentery risk. You warn her lady-in-waiting. She sniffs but listens. Every corridor you turn reveals new hazard. Spilled candle wax slick as ice. Tipped honey barrel feeding ants. Minstrel's dog gnawing discarded mutton bone in pantry doorway. You mop, scatter sand, shoo. Castles are organisms. You are their immune system. Late afternoon, Saltpeter Guild returns with apology casks for the steward, firework mix to please pilgrims. You and Gervais inspect delivery. Barrels marked fine grade, but drilled test hole reveals sludge thin as soup. They've substituted low-quality scrape to recoup spilled load. Steward lacks nose for nitrate. You have plenty. You corner foreman privately and lay out ultimatum. Swap barrels with genuine stock by sundown, or you demonstrate their fraud to the Lord using a simple spark test, one that might embarrass the entire guild before nobles and clergy. Foreman's jaw knots. He relents, dispatching riders to fetch real goods. Victory tastes like caustic ammonia, but it's yours. Still, you've earned an enemy's oath. Evening Mass gathers in the courtyard around flaming braziers. The relic, perched in crystal case, glows amber under torchlight. Pilgrims hum hymns that drift like bees through the dusk. You watch from parapet, dead tired but alert. Torch smoke rises clean, no sewer reek, thanks to your day's work. Pride warms chill bones. Then chaos strikes, a shrieking whinny, wood crack, wheel squeal, saltpeter wagon careens through outer gate, driverless, horses spooked by firework testers. Wagon veers toward massed pilgrims. You sprint down stair flights 3 at a time, shove through crowd, grab a dangling harness strap and yank hard. Horse jerks left, wagon tips, a barrel tumbles, bursts open. Grain product only, mercifully not saltpeter. But the horses bolt on, dragging you 50 paces before garrison aids. Lives spared, but the crowd surges in panic, trampling brazier coals into straw mats near chapel steps. Flames lick banners. You leap, kick embers into mud, shout for water buckets. Gervais appears, saint in slime-stained cloak, hauls buckets faster than any soldier. Together you douse the flare before it catches linen awnings. Pilgrims see you soaked, steaming, and cheer. For one heartbeat, the stink man becomes hero. Lord Mathern descends from dais, clasps your shoulder, thanks you publicly, cheers double. Yet across the yard, you spot saltpeter foremen staring daggers. This stunt reeked of sabotage aimed to disgrace you, now backfired spectacularly. Mathern's praises fade when the steward whispers in his ear. The Lord's smile snaps shut. The steward points at you, murmurs again. Mathern's eyes narrow, curiosity more than anger. He beckons you aside. Private corner, under rain-spattered arch. My seneschal's ring, he begins. Missing 4 nights. Steward claims you collect lost objects. He says the words politely, but they weigh a ton. You meet his gaze, calculate trust. Mathern is just leader, stern yet fair. The seneschal, though, holds purse strings, and Sir Remy skulks in the wings. You decide partial truth buys safety. You hand Mathern the ring. Recovered from waste channel, my lord. I meant to return discreetly once certain of proper owner. You omit Remy's trencher evidence, Hawkhood's sale prospects. Mather nods, tension easing. You've earned coin, he states. Keep it, but answer, how came it there? You shrug. Many shoots converge. Could be accident, could be concealment. You watch his reaction. A flicker, worry, suspicion, crosses brow. He thanks you again, departs. Now you hold leverage. The Lord trusts you, knows you saw more than spoke. Allies grow in unlikely gardens. Night deepens. Festival's second wind whistles through corridors. Drunks spill ale on tapestry footings. Children lose themselves under tables. You patrol, collect chamber pots overflowing like cauldrons. Gervais drags the sledge, humming a tavern ditty, astonishing you with reserve stamina. Halfway to pit, constables block path, plague watch. They demand all waste be burned under their oversight. Fear spreads faster than fever. You argue controlled fermentation is safer than open burn. They threaten incarceration. You propose compromise. Tonight, only inner ward waste burned in northern fire trench. Main pit operations continue sealed. They agree if you supervise burn. So you do, a grim midnight bonfire at Moat Edge. Ash swirling into stars. Pilgrims think it part of ceremony. Cheer sparks like blessings. One ember lands on your sleeve. You pat it out. Back to pit, final hall of night, and a grisly find. A booted foot protruding under fresh sludge at shaft edge. Body recently dumped, still wearing chain leggings. Gervais retches. You steady him. You haul corpse free. Sir Remy's page, recognizable by falcon-embossed belt. Throat slit. Panic could topple kingdom. You think quick. Hide evidence until Lord informed privately. You and Gervais wrap body in canvas, stow in locked cart shed cold as cellar. You scrub blood trail with lye water, praying no lantern watchers saw. You send Gervais to fetch Mothern discreetly. Meanwhile, you search corpse pockets. Gaming markers, a receipt for hawk sale, and a parchment stub bearing wax smear, but crest unclear. No ring. Mathern arrives cloaked, steward and 2 loyal guards. He sees corpse, face hardens, recognizes page, orders silence. If festival learns of murder, riot follows. He tasks you with first light investigation. Who used pit shoots unscheduled? Who entered latrine tower late? You accept, though exhaustion claws eyeballs. Mothern promises reward. Name your boon, if truth revealed. You only ask that Plague Watch back your sanitation directives without quarrel. He agrees. As dawn threatens, you and Gervais stagger across yard. He whispers, "We're neck deep in noble secrets." You laugh bitterly. Always were. Just didn't know how high the filth piled. Finally, bunk rise calls louder than conscience. You collapse in hayloft above forge, steam rising from damp clothes. Before sleep swallows you, one thought stings. Remy's trencher, the Hawkhood, the murdered page. Threads not towards something foul. Tomorrow the pit will yield more than waste. It will cough up truth, and you'll either bury it or be buried with it. Drag the frost-stiff blanket off your face. Feel the sting of dawn air, already tainted by wood smoke and whatever simmering in that gigantic kettle the cooks abandoned for 2 heartbeats too long. Your shoulders rasp like old hinges as you roll upright. No trumpet, no bell, only the forge hammer thudding somewhere below, reminding every soul the castle never truly sleeps. Gervais materializes beside the ladder, hair wild, eyes saucer-wide. "They found another one," he whispers, voice hoarse, as though saying it too loud might summon more bodies. You swallow the taste of stale ash and follow. The outer bailey looks half drunk and half dead. Pilgrims from yesterday's revels sprawl under awnings. Monks pick their way between them, sprinkling holy water, and a flock of chickens, escaped from the feast pen, pecks at discarded barley mush, completely unbothered by the corpse stretched near the well. This second victim lies face down, throat cut but wound sloppy, desperation not precision, boots and belt gone. You kneel, mindful of gawkers, and nudge the cloak aside. The tailor's assistant, Jacquet, the one who flirted with every kitchen maid and bragged he'd won big at dice with a knightly patron. So the pattern grows, someone tidying witnesses. Mathern pushes through ring of guards, eyes rimmed red from a night without sleep. He bends, squints at the bruises. You murmur, "Different blade height, left-handed swing." He understands, not the same killer, or the killer's wearing two faces. Seneschal lurks behind, lips thin as parchment. He's grateful for the ring's return, but his gaze never leaves the blood pooling in the dust, perhaps picturing his own. You catch that flicker again, fear disguised as bureaucratic annoyance. The crowd thickens. You must move the body. You order stable lads to fetch a stretcher, but before they step forward, a voice as bright as shattered glass cuts the dawn. Sir Remy, swaggering between hungover merchants, wearing a fresh cloak of deep wine red and a grin too wide for the hour. Such ugliness so early, he sighs, spinning a dagger on one finger, casual. His ring finger remains conspicuously bare. Mathern stiffens. Remy bows mocking low. You can smell last night's vintages seeping from his pores. He notices your stare, tosses the dagger into the air, catches it with flair. Lost something, Master Digger? I hear you rescued trinkets from the muck. No time for jousts of pride. The plague watch barrels in. New officers you don't recognize, splashed with yellow badges stippled in soot. They demand quarantine of the well. Jacquet's body counts as contamination. You argue that blood on the stones will wash deeper into groundwater if left. They insist on lids and sealing wax. Mathern wavers. You volunteer to cleanse the site. Ash, quicklime, cedar oil. Convincing them buys you the day's first victory. Investigation starts in the Hawk Mews, logically, Jacquet's workstation last night. The mews stink of ammonia and dead rabbit, but you know the odor well enough to sift through it. Broken jesses on the floor, a toppled stool, chalk marks on the ledger showing 3 birds traded out when only 2 were due. Receipts missing. You find a smear of tar on the latch, tar used to seal parcels, like the crate that carried the saint's relic. Jacquet might have handled both. While cataloging, you hear Gervais gasp. He's found a bundle tucked in straw, half a dozen ivory dice, each pip embossed with serpent scales, identical to the set clinking in Remy's pockets during yesterday's brawl. Gambling tokens. Proof? Not yet, but wait tilts. You detour to the Saltpeter Guild shed. Empty. Barrels swapped as promised, but the foreman nowhere in sight. A scrap of parchment curls on the floor. Tally list, names, sums. Jacques' name sits beside a figure erased, rewritten higher, then stabbed through with a nail. The paper thinks of oat beer, Foreman's preferred breakfast. Debt ledger, murder ledger. Back in the inner yard, petitions queue outside Mathern's solar. Plague measures, merchant fines, chapel donations. You slip in through scullery door, hand him the dice, the ledger scrap, the tar smear explanation. Seneschal glowers, claims you overreach. Mathern waves him quiet. Give the digger latitude, he says. St. Romuald himself rose from a midden, if legend holds. Seneschal flinches. The irony stabs too close. Mathern authorizes an inquest, but secretly he won't cancel Festival Day 2. Politics, coin, and faith outrank corpses. You accept the poison chalice, solve murders, stem plague, hush scandal. First step, retrace the waste routes. You and Gervais descend into the main pit corridor, lanterns flickering. The air hums thick with methane and last night's partial burns. You pop the side valve, vent gas, then climb into the channel where Sir Remy's hawk hood surfaced. You probe the sludge with iron rod marked at inch intervals. Depth irregularities appear. Fresh fill where someone shoveled matter from another shaft to bury something deeper. You ordered Gervais topside to lower rope buckets. Together, you remove sludge foot by rancid foot. At 30 inches, metal clinks. You fish out a small luck box, oak banded with brass, no key. Etched crest, again the serpent-wrapped R. You drag it to a wash trough, sluice filth, and pry hinge with the rod. Inside, 6 silver signet rings, identical save for initials scratched under the bezels, and a purse of clipped coins, slivers trimmed from edges. Coin shaving is treason. Rings suggest a forgery racket. Create duplicates, plant them to frame rivals, launder debts. You can almost smell the hangman's hemp tightening around someone's neck. As you inventory, footsteps slap stairs. Sister Maeve arrives, breathless. "The stable hens are dead," she blurts. "Buboes burst overnight. And the child." Her voice cracks. "If it's plague," she can't finish. You tell her about quicklime reserves, smoke purges, rat hunts. But she's here for more. She needs rosemary, pine resin, and alum. You promise delivery, after midday, once you extort the guilds for supplies. She clutches your wrist, gratitude and terror mingling. To secure herbs, you must cross the market green, now a carnival of relic peddlers. You barter ash buckets for sacks of dried wormwood. Toss in a saltpeter sample to a spice vendor he can resell as miracle fire, less potent but still showy. You hate adding tinder to superstition, but lives weigh heavier than virtue today. En route back, you spot the saltpeter foreman in an alley with 2 burly men, thrusting coin at them. You eavesdrop behind a cart. He hisses. Tonight, when the digger hauls South Trench, you dump the corpse and light the powder. Smoke will hide everything. They nod, vanish. So the plan is triple. Murder, disposal, sabotage to ruin your reputation, and maybe torch the castle. You slip away, find a guard you trust, instruct him to shadow the foreman, and arrest him if he approaches the South Trench after sunset. The guard, a veteran named Hobb, owes you after you cured his daughter's cough with nettle syrup. Debt repaid. Mid-afternoon, you detour to the rat warrens. Grain storeroom under the granary. Traps unsprung. Poison baits nibbled. Rat prints thick. You follow tunnel they chew along the baseboard, straight to a crack in the stone leading beneath the chapel foundations, exactly where the saint's relic is displayed. Rats ferry fleas, fleas ferry plague. You seal crack with fresh mortar, laced with crushed mint and quicklime. Temporary, but buys hours. Above, choirs rehearse hymns, oblivious. You wonder how many pilgrims carry the same fleas. History shows plague rides pilgrims as easily as rats. You must accelerate. The seneschal corners you near the armory, tone oily. Claims Mathern trusts you too much. Offers purse if you pin deaths on vagrants and support a sanitary reform contract he intends to award to his cousin, basically privatizing your operation so he can siphon fees. You feign interest, request details, then step away to consider, pocketing his note as incriminating proof. Sun sets bronze. Drums summon crowds to watch fireworks, guilds promised spectacle. You station yourself by the powder wagons, new guards posted. Foreman nowhere visible, but his two hirelings linger, pretending to stack kindling near South Trench. Hobbs signals you, foreman locked in cell, confessed under mild persuasion, no torture, just fear of plague. He admitted Remy paid him, using coin from shaved purses to stage accidents that would disgrace Mathern's stewardship, hoping to push his brother into abdication, secure inheritance stake. The forgeries were Remy's way to bribe courtiers with duplicate rings, implicate the seneschal if caught. But now bodies complicate scheme. Remy acted rashly, silencing Page and Jacquette when they threatened exposure. You need hard proof. The lockbox suffices, but you still lack direct witness linking Remy to killings. You hatch a plan. Lure him to the pit tonight with promise of retrieving another incriminating object. You send Gervais to Remy's chamber with message sealed by the seneschal's own note, forged quickly using charcoal and your best guess of handwriting. It reads, "Meet at South Trench after fireworks. Digging man found purse. Must retrieve before steward sees. Noble greed is reliable. Remy bites." Fireworks boom. Pilgrims cheer. Sparks paint the sky violet and green. Amid distraction, you prepare the trench. Ash raked aside to reveal lockbox lid protruding. Second box empty. Lanterns placed to cast dramatic glint. Hob and two archers hide behind compost heap. Arrows knocked. Remy arrives, Kluk hooded, scabbard loose. He kneels, tries to yank box. You step from shadows. Interesting night for treasure hunting, my lord. He sneers, hand drifting to hilt. You raise both palms. Unwise. Archers. Hobbs' men step forward. Remy freezes. You offer choice. Confess killings, theft, sabotage, accept private exile, or face public tribunal with hangman. Remy laughs, a ragged sound. You think Mathern will hang his own blood? He'll bury this like your pets. He lunges, one reckless draw. Archer looses arrow, skewers cloak to ground. Remy sprawls, blade clattering. Second arrow in air before he even looks up. He yields. You clap irons on him, symbolic, heavy but not too tight. Hob escorts him to dungeon. Crowd still cheering fireworks, unaware a coup fizzled. Past midnight, you stand before Mathern in solar lit by guttering beeswax. Present lockbox, ledger, dice, seneschal's note, foreman's confession, Remy himself in chains outside door. Mathern listens, face sliding from grief to rage to weary resignation. Blood or not, he hangs, he concludes. Seneschal protests, bad optics. Mathern snaps, worse than optics is plague and treason. Punishments set. Remy to stand trial at dawn. Seneschal stripped of seal pending inquiry. Saltpeter Guild fined, foreman jailed. You granted temporary authority over sanitation and plague response, answerable only to Mathern. Reward includes coin, but you choose written charter assuring future gong farmers proper pay, safer equipment, and apprenticeship paths. Legacy over lucre. Mathern signs. You should collapse, but Sister Maeve waits by infirmary door. Stable block quarantined, 3 more cases. She reads verdict in your eyes, almost smiles. Together you burn bedding, fumigate loft with juniper smoke, sprinkle camphor chips along corridor. Your lungs ache, but hope flickers. Dawn glows pewter. Gallows assembled in inner ward. Remy bound. Pilgrims gather, hush curious. Words spread quick. Executions draw crowds like relics. You stand aside. Stench of pit somehow gentler than scent of fear. Remy scans faces, stops on you, flicks half smile. All filth rises eventually, he mutters. You reply, and castles flush. Trapdoor drops. Justice is brief. Neck snaps clean. Some cheer, some pray. Mathern watches, tears unshed. You march to Plague Trench, order fresh lime, new drainage ditches, rat catchers paid triple. Pilgrims already lining roadway for farewell blessings. Festival wraps early. Seneschal replaced by young scribe with honest eyes, who asks your counsel on waste ordinances. By noon, bodies burned, rumors quelled, relic packed for return to capital. A courier, different one, brings sealed letter for you, a commendation, plus invitation to oversee sanitation at Royal Palace. You laugh. Capital cesspits make this castle smell like rosewater. But you pocket parchment. Possibilities stir. For now you walk ramparts, watching pilgrims snake away like a river returning to channels. The castle exhales, the sweet, rotten smell of relief. You and Gervais lean on parapet, sharing crust of bread that finally tastes like victory. He asks, "Think they'll remember us?" You shake head. They'll remember St. Romuald's miracle of the flaming wagon and the righteous hanging. Our work stays underfoot, exactly where it belongs. Yet deep inside, pride smolders brighter than any firework. You proved a gong farmer can steer the fate of lords without ever swapping shovel for sword. Rain arrives without warning, drumming the slate tiles like 1,000 impatient fists and churning the Bailey mud into a broth the corner of old blood. You taste iron on the wind, a promise of storms inland, and pull the hood of your patched cloak tight as you step from the dry archway into the roar of weather and fresh uncertainty. Remy's body is barely cold, but gossip already breeds faster than plague fleas, and every whispered retelling adds a new villain, a fresh miracle, an extra barrel of gunpowder that never existed. You push through knots of servants and pilgrims alike, boots slurping in muck, and sense the castle inhaling again, lungs filling with dread-laced curiosity. If a lord can dangle from the rope, what chance does anyone else have? The first crisis hits before breakfast. 2 laundresses collapse while hauling sheets from the infirmary. Sister Maeve insists exhaustion. The steward panics, shouting, "Black Death!" loud enough to scatter hens and hope in equal measure. You stride into the steamy laundry, steam scented with lye and rosemary, and find the women pale but pulse-strong, lungs clear. Dehydration, not contagion. Still, rumor outruns proof. You drag casks of well water inside, command the washer boys to salt the porridge, and then climb atop a washtub to lecture like a half-crazed bishop. Plague is a cunning fox, but panic is the pit it wants us to dig for ourselves. Some nod, some stare. One giggles because suds drip from your sleeve. Momentarily, order holds. Mathern summons you next, parchment in hand, seal still hot. The royal court is arriving early. Word of Remy's hanging and a miraculous sanitation charter has intrigued his grace. He's traveling incognito to inspect the reforms, perhaps canonize them across the realm. Translation: 30 dozen nobles with silk-lined intestines marching straight toward the latrine trenches you've spent months begging coin to reinforce. If they catch even a whiff of what lies beneath, they'll vote to raise the whole keep and scatter its people like chaff. You have 4 days. Supplies are low, workforce exhausted, plague threat unkilled. Mathern's voice trembles as he hands you the scroll. Whatever you need, he says. You believe him and know how little that means when coffers clang empty. So you draft a schedule worthy of siege engineers. By dawn tomorrow, every cesspit must be limed, every drainage ditch cleared, every rat run smoked. You requisition carpenters to fashion new privy seats from spruce because nobles prefer pine's perfume to oak's sour tannins, and bribe the Carpenters' Guild with first dibs on discarded table scraps after the royal feast. You send Gervais riding to 3 villages for vinegar, quicklime, and as many stray cats as can be bartered. Fleas fear feline patrols. The castle smiths, eyes gritty from forging arrowheads all night, are ordered to hammer iron grates for grate-covered vent shafts, airflow for the pits that won't funnel stench upward like a preaching friar. Night finds you ankle-deep in sludge again, lantern swinging, voice hoarse from barking instructions. Hob descends the rope ladder with a grin. "Brought extra men," he says, and behind him stumble 5 prisoners from the dungeon, shackled 2 by 2. Mathern has commuted their theft sentences to hard service in the Queen's Privy Corps, which is a fancy way of saying they'll dig until their backs snap or their sins wash clean in sweat. You clap Hobbs' shoulder and set the men to work, handing each a makeshift mask of linen soaked in wine vinegar. One refuses. You tell him the fleas love courage, hate sour stench. He ties the cloth quick. Dawn number 2 breaks like a shattered egg, yolk-bright sun leaking through rags of mist. You exit the pit, reeking but satisfied. Fresh lime blankets every wall, and a clever water wheel rigged by the millwrights now draws seepage toward the moat instead of the well. You strip, scrub in rain barrel, swear you'll burn the tunic, then remember fabric's too precious. Gervais returns with cats in burlap sacks. You release them in the grain stores, watch tails vanish like ghosts. One villager sends a gift, a crate of pungent garlic bulbs, to hang near doors and keep miasma away. Science dubious, symbolism priceless. You instruct chapel boys to braid garlands, hang them over every threshold where a royal nose might wander. With pits contained, you turn to optics. Nobles judge by what they see, not what they breathe. You conscript the kitchen staff to boil lavender with lard, producing rudimentary candles. Line corridors with flickering purple-scented flames. The effect masks the vinegar tang, and servants whisper of alchemical air. Let them. Your job is confidence as much as cleanliness. Meanwhile, the new scribe, young, earnest, copies your ordinances onto calfskin scrolls with gilded titles, the articles of necessary filth. You grin, branding matters. But even as the fortress gleams, you know true danger writhes unseen. Sister Maeve brings grim tally. The child from the stable still burns with fever, and 2 guards now cough blood. She lays out her plan: sequester a ward in the old granary, torch straw bedding daily, leech the fevered, purge with juniper fumes. You nod, then volunteer your own bloodletting knife. You've sharpened bone shards into scalpels before, but steel is kinder. If the king finds plague here, she whispers, he'll order purges by fire. You remember villages burned during the last outbreak, smoke columns visible for weeks. Failure means ash for everyone. That evening, a cloaked stranger requests parley in the garden. Under pear blossoms drooping with spring rain, he lowers his hood. The seneschal, formerly disgraced, now desperate. He begs you to intercede with Mathern, plead for leniency. In exchange, he offers secrets, ledgers of unpaid taxes, names of nobles who sponsor smugglers, even whispers about the king's taste for alchemists' powders. You feel pity and revulsion. He is Remy without swagger, a schemer minus the courage to draw steel. The garden's stone bench feels suddenly colder when you decline. Reform only works if examples stand. You suggest he volunteer in plague ward, redemption through service. His eyes widen, face blanches. Offer refused. He flees into blossom shadows, petals falling like mute verdicts. Work continues. Day 3. Carpenters install new privy seats, and you supervise inhaling spice fumes from pounded cloves sprinkled in bowls near each doorway. The thief prisoners haul night soil outside walls to compost heaps freshly ringed with yarrow, herb to quell rot stink. One prisoner collapses. Hub checks pulse. Alive, just heat struck. You order breaks each hour. Even condemned deserve breath. Your men obey, fatigued but respectful. Leadership learned in gutters still counts. A letter arrives on crimson ribbon. The royal party has camped 20 miles away. Arrival dawn tomorrow. Panic flickers in every corridor. Kitchen fires roar with frantic energy. Pastry cooks sculpt swans from dough. Stewards argue over seating charts. You tune out pageantry and focus on plague ward. Sister Maeve's incense cauldrons belch pine and resin. The sick lie on raised pallets. The child's fever broken, guards still weak but stable. You allow yourself a fragile breath of hope, and then a pilgrim collapses outside the ward door, buboes blooming along his neck. He's from beyond the walls, wandered back for alms. You sense the fox at the henhouse gate. Quick decisions. Isolate courtyard, station archers to keep wanderers back, send Gervais with order to seal city gate until royal convoy passes. He gallops off, cloak snapping. Some men protest. Trade will halt. Pilgrims need shelter. You remind them if the king's retinue catches plague here, swords will spill more blood than any famine. They quiet. Night before arrival, storms return. Lightning forks over battlements, thunder shakes shutters. In the pits, water rises fast, a river underfoot. Your new water wheel groans, then seizes. Debris jam lodged between paddles. You and Hob wade thigh-deep in pitch-black slurry, dig with bare arms to clear the blockage. A bloated carcass floats up, one of the missing cats, throat slit. Sabotage, someone still fights reforms. You haul body out, find a coin wedged under collar, serpent embossed. Remnants of Remy's network? You ordered his room searched, maybe followers hide. Not time to hunt. You free the wheel, flow resumes. At ladder, Hob mutters, "We need watchers below, not just above." You agree, and post 2 of the reformed thieves. Promise reduced chains for loyal vigilance. Dawn's first gray wash reveals the royal convoy cresting hills, banners rolled tight to keep incognito, but you can spot gilded carriage wheels from miles away. Mathern greets you on parapet, armor polished, face pallid. "If they find plague," he starts. You interrupt. "They'll find a castle cleaner than their own chambers." He almost smiles, then hurries to marshal honor guard. You position yourself beside main privy corridor, the route nearest guest chambers. Nobles dislike long walks when nature calls. As carriages rumble through gate, you study faces. Courtiers, scribes, 3 bishops, and one man whose hawk-eyed stare lingers on every crack in masonry. Sir Everard, the king's sanitation inspector, rumored to have condemned 2 cities for drainage failures. He steps down, strides straight toward air vent, sniffs. You hold breath. Lavender and cloves mask vinegar. He nods approvingly. First hurdle cleared. Audience in Great Hall proceeds with rehearsed pomp. You stand by pillars while Mathern presents the articles of necessary filth. Scribe unfurls scroll. Everard adjusts spectacles, reads. He questions water wheel math. You explain torque, leverage, overflow channels. He asks about plague containment. Sister Maeve presents patient ledger. 0 deaths since measures. Impressed murmur among nobles. Whispered aside, you detect envy. Reforms threaten lucrative urban cess contracts held by some of these men. Feast that evening is test number 2. Nobles dine on roast boar, garlic swans, almond pudding. You patrol passages, ensuring servants empty chamber pots into sealed copper jars, not corridors. Everard follows, silently noting. Suddenly a shriek from the queen's handmaiden, blood in her basin. You rush, discover an eel, dyed red with wine, leaping from water. Prank? Threat? Eel wears silver ring on tail, serpent seal again. Plot thickens. You apologize, replace basin, dismiss maid to rest. Everard raises eyebrow. You promise investigation. Midnight. You, Hob, and Gervais navigate servant crawl spaces seeking saboteur. You find secret door behind chapel altar leading to smuggler's corridor. Recently disturbed dust, footprints small. At corridor end, a boy, maybe 12, crouches, clutching basket of eels and rings. Tears streak soot on cheeks. He stammers, "They said my sister'd die if I didn't." He describes a hooded woman with coins, serpent seal. Not Remy's men, someone new, perhaps disgraced seneschal pulling strings? You comfort boy, promise safety. Hob escorts him to kitchen for stew. You pocket the rings. You confront seneschal in his quarters, empty. Window rope twisted into night. Chase leads across rain-slick roof tiles to bell tower, where seneschal fumbles with crossbow aimed at royal chambers. You tackle him. Bolt looses into sky. He rants about lost status, vows to expose filth lies by engineering scandal, arrow through cess vent causing stench explosion. Madness born of pride. Guards haul him away. You sigh. Politics stink worse than pits. Morning verdict. Inspector Everard signs royal decree adopting your charter realm-wide, praising Gong Master General for diligence. Mathern rewards you with silver chain. You request lumber instead, to build covered walkways linking privies to ward, shielding sick from weather. He laughs, agrees. Before convoy departs, King's physician seeks audience. He wants your sewage wheel design for palace renovation. You sketch plans on parchment smeared with ash. He pays in gold leaf flasks of cinnamon oil, valuable disinfectant. Progress, you think, smells faintly sweet. Yet, as banners fade over hill, Sister Maeve meets you with worry. New pilgrim shows rash unlike plague. Small, red, water-filled. Pox? Castle cannot rest. Your reforms stem one flood, another rises. You rub temples, already listing herbs for salves, wondering how many crises a gong farmer must shoulder before nobility finds a new scapegoat. Evening shadows stretch. Cats prowl grain stores. Water wheel thumps steady. You climb battlements, gaze at horizon. Behind you, pits murmur, ever hungry. In your pocket, a serpent ring glints, unanswered mystery. Rain begins again, soft this time, as though sky washes yesterday's sins to ready fresh parchment. You inhale scent of wet earth and possibility. Castle life is balance, shovel and scroll, ash and lavender, fear and stubborn, splintering hope. Wind sneaks through arrow slits and skitters along the corridor like a gossip-bent servant, bearing the unmistakable tang of wood smoke, wet straw, and something sharper, fear spiced with impatience. You taste it at once and know the castle is holding its breath again, waiting to see if all the labor, all the quicklime, all the prayers stitched into lavender garlands were enough to kick death from kicking in the front door a second time. Somewhere below, the water wheel thumps its low heartbeat in the pit, reliable as a parish bell. Good. If the machinery falters tonight, the whole fragile illusion of order will topple like a rotten privy seat. You descend the stairs 2 at a time, boots tapping rhythms the stairwell remembers now, every stone an old acquaintance. Hob meets you beside the granary, lantern halo turning his beard silver. "The boils on the pilgrim ruptured," he says, voice low to keep the shadows from eavesdropping. Sister Maeve says definitely the pox, not plague, still bad but slower. You exhale in relief so sharp it tickles your ribs. Smallpox can annihilate a family, yes, but it moves with ponderous dignity compared to plague's sprint. Containment might just be possible. Inside the makeshift infirmary, the air is thick with juniper and vinegar steam. Beds are spaced apart like chess pieces, straw replaced each morning, blankets boiled nightly. Sister Maeve kneels by a pallet, wiping the pilgrim's brow with rosemary water. She looks up, dark crescents beneath her eyes. "If we keep him isolated and burn every scrap of cloth he touches, we'll be safe," she says. Then adds, "provided we don't run out of firewood or vigilance." Firewood, vigilance, 2 currencies you've spent nearly to bankruptcy. You clasp her wrist in silent gratitude, leave her to her crusade, and head for the courtyard, because a more immediate threat prowls there, rumor. Nobles have the poxed man's story already, embroidered with silk thread dread. One version claims he's a witch cursed by the serpent cult. Another that he's the rightful heir to a distant throne, and the boils are divine stigmata. Left unchecked, rumor morphs into panic. Panic drives nobles into carriages and merchants into tailspins, which drives Mothern into fury, which finally lands on your shoulders like a dead mule. So you summon the minstrels. Yes, minstrels, those lute-strumming loafers normally tasked with praising mustaches and tragic love stories. Tonight, their verses will praise sanitation. You hand them scraps of parchment listing the king's glowing remarks, the inspector's signature, the miracle of 0 plague deaths. Sing it in every hall, you command, between ballads about swan pies and gallant knights. They nod, half delighted, half perplexed. Spin a tune long enough, and even slander loses the beat. While chords drift upward, you corner Mathern in the armory, where he's testing a new import from the east, tiny gunpowder poppers meant to scare horse thieves. The steward's face lights when he sees you, then dims as reality intrudes. Another illness, they say, he mutters, firing a pop. The bang rattles pikes on the wall. Are we cursed, friend? All castles are, you answer, but most lack the stomach to admit it. You outline the measures: strict ward, constant burning, removal of every scrap the sick man touches. Mathern relaxes fractionally. Good, he sighs. Then quieter. The king's courier left a message. His Grace writes that if your charter can master both plague and pox, you'll be summoned to court permanently. Court. The word lands like a stone in your boot. Glittering halls, yes, and endless gold for reforms, but also political quicksand, serpents in silk. You picture yourself trading the honest reek of human waste for the perfumed stench of intrigue. Which foulness is easier to shovel? You tell Mathern you'll consider it after the crisis lifts. He nods, understands the weight of the question far better than anyone. Night drapes itself across the keep. Braziers flicker on battlements. You climb to the highest parapet, scanning the village below. Lanterns glow like fireflies, but one near the abandoned tanner's yard moves in a pattern. 3 swings, pause, 2 swings, pause. A signal. You remember the serpent ring in your pouch. The saboteur's network may still wriggle underfoot. And what if they're done with childish eel jokes? What if their next act trades embarrassment for arson? The royal visitors depart at dawn, but a single burning cart in the bailey before then could undo everything, brand your charter a farce, doom your people to reprisals. You grab Hob, 2 night archers, and head for the yard. Rain has slowed to a mist, muffling footsteps. The tannery smells faintly of urine and rotted bark. Easy to miss under usual castle odors, but tonight it's bold, nostalgic, like the ghost of last summer's hides. Lantern light flickers behind warped shutters. You nod. Hob shoulders the door. It crashes inward, revealing the seneschal, escaped again, frantically daubing pitch onto stacked barrels. Behind him, the boy you rescued trembles, bound and gagged, tears cutting white rivers through grime. No time for speeches. Hob tackles the seneschal. Archers kick the pitch bucket. You cut the boy free. He sobs apologies. You hush with a hand to his cheek. Not your fault. The seneschal refuses to speak until you threaten to lash him to a privy seat and lower him into the pit at dawn. Then words spill. He served Remy's father once, dreamed of rising through corruption, thought sabotaging sanitation would prove the system doomed and win him patronage from noble factions opposed to reforms. "They promised me a bishopric," he wails. You almost laugh at the absurdity, filth as path to ecclesiastical glory. You order him shackled, but quietly. A public trial would only feed rumor. Let the king's men decide his fate after departure. You escort the boy to the kitchen, feed him bread and honey, and learn his name, Alaric. He has a sister, indeed, held hostage in a smuggler's loft outside the walls. You promise retrieval, but one crisis at a time. Morning arrives pink and gold. The royal convoy lines the courtyard, wheels already churning the mud. Sir Everard approaches in wool cloak, offers a thin smile, no easy feat for that gaunt face. Your measures impress his grace, he says. Then a curious tilt of the head. Tell me, how did a gong farmer learn hydraulics, epidemiology, and crowd management better than half the stewards in Christendom? You consider several answers. Long nights in cesspits breed long thoughts. Desperation is a fierce tutor. Or simply, the poor study survival while the rich study poetry. You settle on, when everything around you stinks, you either learn how to fix it or drown. He chuckles, actually chuckles, scribbles on parchment, mounts his horse. A final nod, and the convoy rattles away. Silence settles like dust after harvest. Servants exhale, soldiers slump, cats resume lazy patrol. You allow yourself 6 heartbeats of triumph, then stride to Sister Maeve's ward. The pilgrim, cheeks hollow, offers raspy thanks. No new cases overnight. You authorize burned bedding resupply and move on. By week's end, life finds its crooked rhythm again. The poxed man mends. The thief prisoners complete their term and petition to stay on as paid dung haulers. Apparently, honest wages smell sweeter than gallows breath. You agree on condition they mentor new recruits. Hob drafts rotas, Gervais rides for supplies. Alaric helps stable hands until his sister is located. Mathern's rangers discovered her shackled but alive. Rescued at dawn. Smugglers driven off like rats before a torch. The boy's gratitude glows hotter than forge coals. But grand victories are fragile. One brisk dawn, while inspecting the East Trench, you slip on frost-slick steps and plunge waist-deep into slurry. Instant cold claws your bones. Foulness coats every inch. For one absurd heartbeat, you consider staying there, sinking beneath, letting castle and politics swirl above forever. Then a gloved hand, Hobbs, hauls you out. He laughs. Gong master drowned in his own glory? Not yet. You sputter, join the laughter, realize the pit no longer feels like punishment. It feels like anchor. Court summons or not, here is where you make difference tangible as lime under fingernails. That night, Mathern visits the pits first time in years, nostrils flaring skeptically. He finds them nearly odor-free. Water wheel clanks steady, vent grates steam gently. If the king drags you to court, he says, voice echoing off stone, promise you'll write us manuals. You grin. I'll carve them on oak boards if ink runs dry. He surprises you by clasping your shoulder. Friendship forged in muck, stronger than steel. Letters arrive. Cities across the realm adopting your charter, requesting engineers. You dispatch sketches, send Hob to train teams. Sister Maeve pens treatise on juniper and ventilation. Even the minstrels spread ballad of the Midden Miracle. Ridiculous, maybe, but hope smells better than fear. Several moons pass. Spring sunlight glitters on moat water clean enough to reflect swallows. You stand on parapet, watching farmers haul composted dung to fields, food grown from filth. Alaric waves from cart, a grin missing 2 teeth but radiant. You wave back, heart quietly astonished that misery can compost into possibility if tended. A final courier rides in royal livery. He bears parchment of thick vellum, ribboned in blue. Formal appointment as chief sanitation architect to the crown. Salary triple anything you've seen. Palace privileges, staff, titles. You spend the night pacing battlements. Palace means resources to save thousands, maybe millions. Yet castles like this will still drown if leadership leaves. Dawn finds you in Mathern's study, letter unopened. You lay it on his desk. I can't abandon the place that taught me why the work matters, you say. He nods, relieved. Instead, you propose a compromise. Remain here as director of a new school of necessary arts, training apprentices for every city. The crown funds it. You stay grounded. Courier accepts. King values results over residence. You draft charter revisions by lantern. Dream of a world where gong farmers earn respect, not ridicule. Years will pass, you suspect, before nobles truly grasp that good health begins beneath their feet. But revolutions rarely start with trumpets. They start with one person willing to climb into darkness, shovel in hand, lantern high, and refuse to let stench define fate. So, viewer, if your bed now feels a little softer, your own midnight worries a shade lighter, remember the lesson carved beneath stone and lime. Every fortress, every life, is built atop layers of unspoken waste, failures, fears, mistakes. Tend them, turn them, let them ferment into fertilizer, and even the foulest pit can bloom. Ignore them, and they'll rise up, night after night, to poison the air you breathe. That's the story of why it absolutely, unequivocally sucked to be a castle gong farmer, and how, on the days you keep shoveling, it can also feel like the most important job in the world. Sleep well, friends. Tomorrow there will be new messes to clear, new wheels to keep turning, and under it all, the quiet promise that clean beginnings are born in the darkest corners. Until next time, keep your lanterns trimmed, your courage salted, and your sense of humor sharper than the stink. Good night.